Good morning. It's 9 a.m., so we will call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you have submitted a comment request that has been received by administration, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. If the meeting is recessed, callers will be put on hold until the meeting reconvenes, with the exception at noon, where the callers will be asked to call back in. This helps with call quality. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. So this is the annual organizational meeting. We'll just need a motion to adopt the agenda of the meeting. Could I have a motion from council? Councillor Kester moves the approval of the agenda. If we could just have our eScribe, everyone has eScribe open, we'll call the question. That is carried. So 1.3, just for council's information and the public's information, we've just included paragraphs 50 to 56 into this agenda package. And what it is just the rules behind the organizational meeting. And this is just found in Procedure Bylaw 2024-24, and nothing to be voted on. It's just the actual procedures that must be followed in the organizational meeting, including voting procedures if required, and just the general procedures of the meeting. So we'll move to section 1.4 of the agenda, the nomination of Reeve. So in our meeting, nominations and self-nominations are accepted, and we'll open the floor for nominations for the Reeve position. Thank you. Councillor Larson.
I'll nominate Glenn for Reeve.
Okay. Councillor Kester, would you let your name stand for that?
Yeah, my last time.
Perfect.
I'll
Yes.
I'll nominate Amber for Reeve.
Councillor Link, would you let your name stand for Reeve?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll do 3 calls for nominations. First call, second call, third call. Okay. So what we'll do is we will hand out ballots from administration, and then just a secret ballot. Oh, so council already has them, so please fill them out. Either Councillor Link or Councillor Kester. Thank you. We'll collect the ballots. Okay, after the secret ballot, the majority of votes went to Councillor Link. So we'll proceed with the oath of office for the Reeve. And as per section 20 or 53, sub 2 of the procedure bylaw, the meeting will be turned over to the Reeve to preside over the meeting. Thank you.
I, Amber Link of Wheatland County in the province of Alberta, do swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute according to law the office of Reeve. So help me God. Thank you to Council. It's an honor to serve you and to serve our ratepayers for another term. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 1.5, nomination of Deputy Reeve. I'll open the floor for nominations.
I'll nominate Scott Clausen.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Councillor Clausen, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
I'll call a second time for nominations. Thank you, Councillor Kester. Councillor Laursen, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll call a third time for nominations. Hearing none, we'll move to secret ballot.
Okay, so through the secret ballot process, Councillor Scott Clausen received the majority of the ballots. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the oath of office for Deputy Reeve.
I, Scott Clausen of Wheatland County in the province of Alberta, do swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute according to the law the office of Deputy Reeve. So help me God.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Administration has included our Code of Conduct bylaw in our package. I trust that everybody had a chance to review it when they were reviewing the agenda package. Just want to ask that we all commit to aligning our behavior with the Code of Conduct bylaw, and that we just really work hard at making this last year of this term a strong year for serving our community. I don't think we need a motion for that, do we, CAO Henderson?
No, we haven't historically.
Okay, thank you. And then additionally, administration has included some key legislative policies under agenda item 1.7. Again, that's just for, I believe, our information and review. I trust that everybody has had an opportunity to look at those. So we can move to agenda item 2.1. Administration has drafted a calendar for council consideration. Council's wishes. Councillor Laprise.
I'll move approval of the Wheatland County Meeting Event Calendar 2025 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Are there any questions or discussion on the calendar for the upcoming year? Hearing none, I will call the question. And that motion is carried. Administration has also drafted a recommendation regarding scheduling 2025 open house. The recommended motions are to direct administration to schedule one in Division 3 in January of 2025 and one in Division 7 in July of 2025. Councillor Bigger.
Is there any way we get it scheduled, because it's in my division, the open house for February instead of January? Towards the end of February? Thank you.
Councillor Bigger, would you like to make the first
Sure.
recommendation?
I'd like to move that the approval of the Wheatland County administration to schedule an open house at the end of February 2025 to be held at the location of Division 3.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion on the motion? So then in terms of process, I'm assuming administration would closer to that date, bring some potential dates that would work for administration back, or council can sort of roundtable to determine a date.
Yeah, and it would be more to, for council, work for council, not administration, and just, we'll just make sure that we work with the divisional councillor to make sure that works. Thank you.
Perfect. So that'll be on a future council agenda. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. Council's wishes for the second open house. Councillor Laursen? If you can turn your microphone on.
I'll move that council direct administration to schedule an open house in June of 2025 to be held at a location in Division 7.
Thank you, Councillor Laursen. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.31, appointment of signing authorities. Council's wishes.
I'll make the motion to appoint the following as signing authorities for Wheatland County: Reeve Link and Deputy Reeve Clausen, and CAO, General Manager of Corporate and Financial Services, and Manager of Financial Services.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.32, Council's wishes.
I'll move that council appoint MNP LLP as the financial statement auditor for the 2024 fiscal year.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Councillor Custer.
Is there a year?
CAO Henderson, how long was the?
I believe it was, actually, I'll let Joel speak to it. There was a process that we undertook for an RFP.
See what went through, yeah. Morning, Council. Joel here from administration. Yeah, so we did an RFP, a request for proposal this year, because it was the end of the contract. MNP, our existing auditor, they won the contract, and it was for a 3-year cycle, similar to the last, kind of a rolling 3 years. I believe there was an option to extend an additional 2 years at the end of that as well. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or discussion? there's no other questions or discussion, I will call the question. And that motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.4. Administration has provided basically a working copy of our list of boards and committees. I believe historically we have just worked alphabetical order essentially from top to bottom through the committees and boards. So if we can start with the Agricultural Service Board. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So at the moment, I've taken myself off the board and had a resident of mine in my division to fill my shoes. But in the future here, my division has changed and that resident would no longer be in my area. So looking ahead, maybe I'm elected, maybe I'm not, but I think it would be fair for the councillor of this area being able to back on that board in the future. Maybe a transition through, I don't know if ASB has to do something different. I forget how it went, but I think it'd be good for, I don't want to take anything away from the division. So. Keeping in mind that's a year away, but just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, so I think it's important for any councillors who are serving next year just to be mindful of the realigned boundaries when we're looking at the ASB appointments. So just looking, I just pulled up the bylaw, but I'm not on the right clause. So we do have flexibility within the Agricultural Service Board bylaw. Members of the board shall be appointed by council and may consist of council members and members at large and shall have either 5, 7, or 9 voting members with a minimum of 3 council members. So we do have some good flexibility there to accommodate both geographic representation as well as to have a strong representation for members at large, dependent on, different skill sets of council of the day, so, and experience.
I think if it's a discussion at the next ASB meeting or one in the future, whatever the board decides, that's fine. I just wanted to put that out there.
I have a question. The way that the resolution is written, all members of council, that's not the way it's working though, because we've only got, so I'm not sure if that should be changed for this particular year and readdressed for the next one, but it is, as Councillor Clausen has said, that he has stepped aside to allow somebody in his own division.
Yes, that would be correct then. So if a councillor would like to make the motion for Councillor Laprise, Bigger, Eichert, Reeve-Link, Councillor Kester, and Councillor Larson, then that would suffice. I think it's just probably copy and paste from last meeting.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion on the motion?
And just information to council as well, that we have one member's term expiring on October 31st. So we could advertise that for one year, or we could add a 7th councillor. Realistically, whatever council would like to do. So
Perhaps administration could bring options back to our next council meeting.
Sure.
And with some information just about the current terms of the members at large and their appointments. And then council can determine if, the composition of the board at that time. Does that work for everybody if we have more information about the current appointees? Any objection? Perfect. Thank you to administration. And then, if there's no other questions or discussion, I will call the question. Motion is carried. And then my apologies. I realized in the package we had the order a little bit differently than it is on the working sheet. Would administration prefer that I'm just trying to look at your motions.
Yeah, sorry, administration's intention was just to follow the sheet, just
Okay.
so it's easy for council to kind of follow along.
Okay, perfect. So then there are some subcommittees of the ASB, but those appointments will be made at the ASB organizational meeting that will be upcoming. So let's move to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. Administration had a recommendation in our package on page 72. Council's wishes. Yeah, for sure.
I move that council appoint the following individuals to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board for a 3-year term expiring October 31st, 2027. And that'll be Jay Anderson for Division 1 and Slavo Halkovic in Division 5.
Thank you, Councilor Priest. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. There's no motion required for the Regional Assessment Review Board. Okay. We will we'll go to agenda item 2.7, Community Enhancement Regional Board, and there are recommendations starting on page 75. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council appoint the following individuals to the Community Enhancement Regional Board. So Robin Harms as the council for Division 1 for a term commencing November 1st, 2024 and expiring October 31st, 2026. Margot Comstock as the council for Division 2, the same term. Marcy Field for Division 3. Maya Zimmerman for Division 4. Maxine Bartolin as Division 5. Randall Melcher for Division 6, and Kim Sandom for Division 7 for the same term.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion from council?
I just wanted to say that this board is pretty incredible, and the fact that I think was 6 of the 7 board members with terms expiring are reapplying. So that just speaks to the great work that gets done there and how good a board it is for people wanting to be on it, to collaborate and work together for the greater good of our community. So love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councilor Priest. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We will move back to agenda item 2.4 and resume that and look at the Regional Emergency Management Committee.
I'll move approval that the Wheatland County appoint Reeve Link and Deputy Reeve Clausen to its representatives to the Regional Emergency Management Committee for the 2024-25 term in accordance with bylaw 2024-16.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Municipal Planning Commission.
I'll move that Wheatland County appoint all members of council to the Wheatland County Municipal Planning Commission for the 2024-25 term in accordance with bylaw 2022-26.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to the Public Presentation Committee. Council's wishes.
I'll move that Wheatland County appoint all members of council to the Wheatland County Public Presentation Committee for 2024-25 in accordance with bylaw 2024-05.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. There's a second recommendation from administration. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'll move that Wheatland County Council appoint Reeve Link as chair and myself as vice chair for the Public Presentation Committee.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to intermunicipal development plan. So the intermunicipal committees. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'll make the motion that council accept the intermunicipal development plan and intermunicipal collaboration framework list as presented.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Marigold Library Committee. Looking for one councillor to sit on the Marigold board.
I sit on it now. I'll stay on unless somebody else wants to put their name in.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any other councillors interested in serving on the Marigold board? A motion to appoint Councillor Bigger.
I'll move approval that Wheatland County appoint Councillor Bigger as its representative to the Marigold Library Committee for the 2024-25 term.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland Family and Community Support Services. Looking for two councillors to sit on that. Councillor Laprise. Oh, my apologies. We should appoint an alternate for Marigold Library. Who would like to, Councillor Laprise?
I'd put my name forward for that.
Thank
Be an
you.
alternate.
Is anybody else interested in serving as alternate? A motion to appoint Councillor Laprise as the alternate.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Now we'll move to Wheatland Family and Community Support Services, looking for 2 counselors to serve.
I sit on this board currently, and I'd like to stay on if I can.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise.
Same with here.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Anybody else interested in serving on WFCSS? A motion to appoint Councillors Bigger and Laprise.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried.
Curious if we do we have an alternate?
There's a recommended motion for that. Is there anybody interested in serving as alternate? Councillor Laverson?
I'll serve as alternate.
Thank you. Anybody else? A motion to appoint Councillor Laverson as alternate?
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland Housing Management Body Board, looking for 3 representatives. Councillor Laverson.
I currently sit on the board and I'd like to stay on the board.
Thank you.
I sit on the board, but I actually would like to get off at this point. I just need a break from it.
Councillor Kester.
Sit on the board.
Can you just use your microphone, please?
I'd like to sit on the board too.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Do we have a third? So previously we did use a process to do a call for public members at large. Perhaps we could do that for our third appointment. So then in terms of a motion, we could appoint Councillors Kester and Laverson to the board, and then would it be a separate motion to direct administration?
Yes, so appointment of 2 in one motion, and actually you could probably do it all in one motion, and then
Okay.
just appoint a third if council agrees to that process.
Just a question. Does our current member at large, was his a 1-year term? Was it was just a 1-year
I
term?
believe we did a 1-year term.
Yeah, I'd have to confirm, but I would be 99% positive.
So when everybody's clear in terms of the process, administration would advertise the position and the skills profile that was provided by the organization, and then bring the applicants to council for decision at a future council meeting. Councillor Kester and then Councillor Laverson.
Currently, unless I missed that, we had an appointee last term. I can't ever remember hearing any reports from the meetings he attended. And I'm just wondering if this is going to become a habit, appointing members at large. We should maybe construct some sort of a policy for them to follow. Meeting attendance, if you miss so many reports, probably written would be easiest for them, but they want to attend a meeting. I believe it's usually first meeting of the month we used to do reports. Something I think should be written down to give them guidance.
Really good
I'll
points,
make
Councillor
that a
Kester.
motion.
Okay. Do you want to make the motion of the appointments and the process, and we could include those amendments to the process for administration to outline a Some expectations.
One, but we'll try it.
Would administration like us to separate that out?
So I think that council should probably, just at this point, do the two appointments.
Sure.
Council appointments and direct administration to advertise for a position or a member at large.
Okay.
And then once the member at large applications are received, then just, have almost like a contract with that person, just saying like, okay, here's what is required for your appointment.
My preference would be to see Councillor Kester's recommendations. I think they're prudent and important. I would prefer to see that upfront when we
Upfront, okay.
advertise for members, just so the expectation is clear that there would be expectations around meeting attendance and reporting, just so that expectations are managed for anyone who's considering applying.
Okay.
But so perhaps let's do the appointment motion first, and then we could do a second motion directing administration just to update the process to include expectations around regular meeting attendance and written reports or reporting to council.
Back to my original motion, accept the nominees for Wheatland Housing Management.
Okay. So we have a motion to,
Councillor Larson and Councillor Custer.
you bet. Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. The second motion regarding a member at large.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to advertise for third position and outlining the requirements for meeting attendance and reporting of meetings they attended.
Thank you, Councillor Kester.
Then I believe, that's not part of the comment, after you would bring them recommendations to council at the time, then council could decide if they make a policy or not with them recommendations. Okay, okay.
There's a motion on the floor. Any questions or discussion? Just give administration a moment. So we've got the council direct administration to advertise for a member at large position with the Wheatland Housing Management Body and to update the procedures to include meeting attendance and reporting. Any questions or discussion on the motion?
And just a point of clarification from administration, this is prior to posting the member at large position, is that right?
Post member at large, we should have the recommend, or the expectations with it.
And
So they're no upfront, they have to do a report.
yes, and that should be approved by council prior to posting, is administration's question, sorry. So
I think as long as so just for I'd be comfortable if you use the process you used last year, which I believe outlined sort of what we have included in this package for WHMB, and then just include that it's essentially the expectation would be attendance at monthly meetings and reporting on those meetings to council. Like, I'm not sure that we need to approve that.
I think
Okay.
up to staff, yeah.
Okay. It's
If we
just
don't like it, we'll let you know after the next meeting.
Okay. sounds
I
good.
think just as long as we're upfront about sort of the frequency of meetings and that things always come up. There's, all of us have missed meetings or needed to rely on an alternate or, things do happen. But just as long as the meeting schedule is made public with the call for members and and then I agree strongly that our reporting to council is an important component of that representation. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland Regional Corporation.
I'm currently on the board and I'll let my name stand. I'd like to stay there.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Councillor Larson.
I wouldn't mind being on that board.
Thank you. Councillor Laprise.
I also would like to put my name forward for that board. In hopes of being elected again next time, and given that Gleason is on that water line, I wouldn't mind having some experience with that.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Anybody else who would like to sit on WRC? Thank you, Councillor Custer. Anybody else? So we'll move to secret ballot. We are looking for 2 appointees.
Okay, with the secret ballot, there was a majority received by 2 councillors, so Councillor Laprise and Councillor Eichert received the majority of the ballots.
A motion to that effect, please. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So moved.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. And then looking for interest in serving as an alternate for WRC. Thank you, Councillor Kester. Is there anyone else interested in serving as alternate?
I'll put Councillor Clausen's name for it if he'll let it stand.
Oh, and I apologize, I should have checked. Councillor Larson, you would let your name stand for alternate?
Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yes, as an alternate, I would.
Anyone else who's interested? We'll go to secret ballot. Choose one from the 2 nominations.
The member of council that received the majority of the ballots for this was Councillor Clausen, or Deputy Reeve Clausen, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. A motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to the Addictions Resource Coalition of Strathmore and Wheatland, or ARC.
I currently serve on that board, so I'll let my name stand.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Is there anyone else interested in serving on that board? A motion to appoint Councillor Baker.
I'll move approval that Wheatland County appoint Councillor Bigger as its representative to the Addictions Resource Coalition of Strathmore and Wheatland for the 2024-25 term.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. And that motion is carried. Looking for an alternate for ARC?
I think I sit as alternate and I would let my name stand.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Anyone else interested in serving as alternate? A motion to appoint Councillor Priest.
Make the motion that Wheatland County appoint Councillor Priest as its alternative representative to the Addiction Resource Coalition of Strathmore and Wheatland for the 2024-2025 term.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Alberta Care.
I'd let my name stand for this, and also I'm a area director for it as well. So.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Anybody else who's interested in serving on Alberta Care? A motion to appoint Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Community Futures Wild Rose. I do currently serve on this board and would let my name stand to serve for another year. Is there anybody else who's interested in serving on Community Futures Wild Rose?
I'll move approval of that Wheatland County appoint Reeve Link as its representative to the Community Futures Wild Rose for 2024-25.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Looking for an alternate for Community Futures Wild Rose. I think so.
I'll let my name stand. I haven't been to a meeting over a couple of years. Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to serve as alternate? Not a motion to appoint Councillor Bigger.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to Drumheller District Solid Waste Management Association. Councillor Laverson.
I'd like to let my name stand and get on that board again. We talk about fiscal responsibility here quite often. I'm actually the closest geographically to Drumheller, so I'd like to let my name stand.
Thank you, Councillor Laverson. Anyone else who's interested?
I'll let my name stand as well.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Anybody else? We'll move to secret ballot. Thank you. Should be able to get through.
The member receiving the majority of the ballots for this position was Deputy Reeve Clausen. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Motion to that effect?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. Looking for an alternate for Drumheller Solid Waste?
I'll put my name up.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Anybody else? A motion to appoint Councillor Eichert?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to the Rural Fire Associations.
I'll move approval that Wheatland County appoint local councillors as representatives to the Rural Fire Associations for the 2024-25 term.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. That motion is carried. We'll move to the seed plants.
I'll move that the local councillors be appointed to the seed plants for Strathmore, Hazara, and Rosebud.
Thank you, Councillor Laverson. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to SEWA, Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association.
I'll let my name stand for Energy from Waste, and just a note to council, hopefully everything's going to the board. So they'll have direction given back to us by the end of the year, whether we continue or which path forward we go. It's been an extremely busy summer with going through vendors again. So it's been probably the busiest board I've been on, but 99.9% of it is Zoom. So it's really good that way because it's all Southern Alberta. So there's no mileage really.
Anyone else who would like to sit on SEWA? A motion to appoint Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion? Call the question. Let's give it a moment. I think we just need a motion. That motion is carried. Looking for an alternate for Sewa?
I'm currently the alternate, and I really enjoyed the one or two meetings that I was able to attend. I really enjoyed working with these people, so I'd love to let my name stand.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Anyone else who's interested? A motion to appoint Councillor Eichert.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Okay, so was the motion carried? Okay, perfect. Motion is carried. We will move to Strathmore District Egg Society.
I believe I'm currently on that board. There has been no discussion, like I had no meetings last year at all, so it's a minimal deal. I will allow my name to stand.
Just a point of, just a question, is there a need to continue appointing somebody to it? Is there some?
Perhaps we can make the appointment today, and then perhaps we could follow up with the Strathmore District Agricultural Society and see if this is a committee that may start meeting again, depending on progress with, say, capital funding or something like that with the project. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But prudent to check, I think. Anybody else who's interested in serving on the advisory committee? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. I'm just looking for an alternate for the advisory committee.
I could set it alternate, but I'm curious to see if they want to continue with it or not, because I do believe staff have been working with it on and off. But see where it goes. They should come back and give us a report or something.
Anyone else who would like to serve as alternate? A motion to appoint Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I will so move.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland and Adjacent Districts Emergency Medical Services Association. Councillor Laverson.
I've been on that board and we currently have some testy things going on with Alberta Health, so I'd like to continue on that to provide continuity.
Thank you, Councillor Laverson.
I'd like to get back on that board. I've been on for a number of years.
Thank you, Councillor Custer. Anyone else who would like to serve?
I was hoping to get back on that one too. Been on it off and on for a few years. My name up?
And in 7 years, it's the only board I haven't sort of sat on, so I'd like to put my name forward to sit on it, so.
Anyone else who would like to sit? So I'll move to secret ballot. We're looking for 2 appointees.
So 2 councillors received the majority of the votes off the first ballot. So it was Councillor Eichert and Councillor Bigger. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Looking for a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland Regional Partnership Committee. Oh, yes. Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. An alternate for Woodemza.
I could let my name stand for an alternate.
Anybody else interested? Thank you, Councillor Kester. Anybody else? We'll move to secret ballot. Thank you.
I think Shanna should have said, so Brian, you do the computer and I'll do the.
The councillor receiving the most votes for that one, the majority was Councillor Kester. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. A motion to that effect. Councillor Larson.
I'll move that Councillor Kester be appointed as alternate for Woodemsa.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to Wheatland Regional Partnership Committee. Council's wishes.
I don't believe we've had a meeting for 2 years. Is this a relevant committee?
Last I recall, we
I'm in
were,
favor of meeting, but council's made motions that we're not going to attend, so.
I believe we were awaiting some work with the villages regarding correspondence. I don't think we've had an update.
No, and there hasn't really been an update either. It's just kind of at a stalemate. It may be worth not appointing this board, and the reason administration would say that is that there is no bylaw in place establishing this committee either. So the quorum of council probably shouldn't meet anyways, if there's no bylaw in place for the committee itself. But it's totally up to council. It hasn't been meeting, so it might not hurt, but just administration's advice. Thank you.
So perhaps we could defer this until we have an update on the outstanding issues with the parties. Do we need a motion for that or just leave it?
You can just leave it.
I believe, please, anybody raise anything that we have missed, but I believe that completes the committees and boards, and we can move to agenda item 2.5. Drum. Yeah. Councillor Hester, are you able to just hold your thought and we will wait 5 minutes or take a break for 5 minutes and then resume at agenda item 2.5? Is 5 minutes enough? Yeah. Perfect. Good morning. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll resume our agenda at agenda item 2.5. Councillor Kester, you have the floor.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank council for voting me back onto Wheatland Housing. That's the first appointment of any board I've gotten in the last 3 organizationals.
Yeah, so obviously we have a democratic, consistent process that we use for committee appointments. And there's been a number of committee openings where, you know, I guess we'll just focus on it's a consistent democratic process, and I trust that council makes decisions based on putting the strongest appointees on all of our boards and committees, and also based on where interest is expressed as well. So there's a lot of boards and committees where there's potential to express interest where perhaps it hasn't been expressed, and that's well within everybody's liberties as councillors and based on capacity and that type of thing. But I trust that we have a strong process that we follow. Administration prepared a report starting on page 69 regarding Drumheller and Area Health Foundation. I believe council had directed for this to be placed on the organizational meeting agenda. I do just want to note, I believe there's a small error in the report, just at the very top. It says the board bylaws, which state that the board requires 1 county elected official or designate position and 1 member at large. I believe in our October 1st council meeting package, we had the Articles of Association, and on page 90 and 103, it indicated that Wheatland County has 1 member that sits on Drumheller Health Foundation. So just for clarity. And I think it was in the bylaws or the Articles of Association bylaw that indicated as indicated in this report, that can be an elected official or a designate. Now I know Mrs. Mary Marshman has been representing Wheatland County as our representative, but I'm not sure that we have followed a formal process with that appointment. And I'm not sure if we need to align with the Drumheller and Area Health Foundation bylaws. And I'm not sure if we know if Mrs. Marshman would be interested in continuing to, she's volunteered in that capacity for several years. Very grateful for her service. I'm not sure if there would be a process to reach out to her and inquire if she would be willing to continue to serve.
Administration can do that if directed by council.
Council's wishes. I know we've been very grateful. We've had other members of the community that have volunteered to serve in that capacity as well throughout the years. Councillor Bigger.
That council accepts the Drumheller Area Health Foundation Committee appointment report as information. Do I need to say that? And to direct staff to contact the member at large, the present member at large?
To inquire about her interest in continuing to serve as a volunteer representative on behalf of Wheatland County.
So move.
I'll just give administration a moment. Councillor Kester.
Question, when staff is inquiring, I know for the majority of my years here, we've had 2 members sit on that board, one at large and one a counselor. You could inquire of the board, how many of the board members are volunteers and how many are counselors. I think it's important to note that Wheatland County probably has the 2nd largest population in area served by this board outside of Drumheller. I would guess Wheatland County would be 2nd. I think it's important that we show strong support.
Are you requesting an amendment to the motion, Councillor Kester?
Staff was going to reach out. I'm just adding on, they reach out to the board and see the composition, and if you even want to go back in history and see how many were appointed by previous councils, but I know the one was on there for probably 30 years and the other one I bet you was on there for close to 30 years too.
Since I've been in council, there hasn't been a counselor on there, though.
Ben was on it.
Ben was on it.
No, he
Ben was
was,
always on it.
he was never appointed onto
He just,
Yeah, I believe he served as a volunteer.
as a volunteer, yeah, but not as a counselor.
Question to administration to amend the motion. And I'm looking, I should know. A recommendation for process.
Just, if you could just give administration one moment.
I feel like we should vote on this motion and make another one if we want to. Like, we were talking about reaching out to this member at large, and Councillor Kester's talking about reaching out to the board. It's 2 different things in my mind.
Yeah, so that might be the cleanest if we address this motion and then we can put a second motion on to get more information from the board. Then we don't have to deal with amending. We can have a motion to amend.
no, I don't think so.
Just maybe to provide clarity, Councillor Kester, are you suggesting to amend the motion on the floor, or are you suggesting a separate motion? Just so, just for the administration's clarity.
I'm not going to amend the motion on the floor because it's virtually 2 motions.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, which administration has put up on the screens. The council accept the Drumheller Area Health Foundation Committee appointment report as information and to direct staff to contact the present member at large to inquire about her interest in continuing to represent Wheatland County on the committee. Is there any questions or discussion on the current motion? I'll call the question.
Oh, I guess I should. On that page.
That motion is carried.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to find out up the broad spectrum of who's appointed or who attends these Drumheller and Area Health Foundation Committee.
You had previously referenced historical council representation. Did you want administration to bring back any previous motions as well? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, I'm trying to remember, but it was just recently, I think, the last report, there was our last agenda package, there was a deal from Drumheller, the foundation, and they said there was only one. I believe it was highlighted that there's only one member from Wheatland County that's going to be allowed to vote. So I'm wondering why we're going through this if the member at large is going to stand. It's just a waste of fiscal resources, in my opinion.
So there is a provision. So and I'm not completely clear, there's 2 Article 1s under Drumheller Area Health Foundation bylaws. And I can't recall if the first was replaced by the second or vice versa, but they both have the same member composition. And they both indicate that, this is on page 90 and 103 of our October 1st council meeting package, where administration had gathered information about the bylaws, that County of Wheatland has 1 member. Kneehill County has 1 member, Starland County has 1 member, Town of Drumheller has 2 members. Then there's also a provision for 6 individuals selected by those original 5 members of the board that will be members at large. So one of those or several of those could be from the Wheatland County area. They just have to be from the area that is served by Drumheller Area Health Foundation. And then there are, within those 6, they do delineate out that 1 would be a member of the medical staff of the Drumheller District Health Services Center, and 1 would be a nursing staff of Drumheller District Health Services Center. So then that would leave 4 positions that would be members at large. So there could be historical context where we did have at times a member that was the County of Wheatland member. I'm not certain if there were motions formalizing that from Wheatland County. And then there could have been a second as one of those 4 essentially public members at large, is my understanding. So you're asking about just the relevance of the historical context.
But as you've laid it out there, that the second is whether or not there's another member from Wheatland is chosen by the board, like the 5 existing. So it's sort of, it's out of our hands anyhow, so.
Yeah. Any further comments on the motion, or Councillor Kester, do you want to speak to Councillor Eichert's comment? So you feel like it's important to understand how many of those 5 members are councillors versus members at large as the member, as the original 5 membership?
I believe it's important for Wheatland County to make a show at all our partnerships. And if we're the only county that doesn't send an elected official, that says something. I would like to know how many are elected. I know people sit on that board and they're elected. Ben always used to go. And so did Gary Crafton. He even went for Wheatland County when he moved to Drumheller. I know it's extra work and it's travel time. But if there's a councillor interested in going, I believe we should take that opportunity. Healthcare is becoming more of a regional issue. This government has disbanded AHS and they're trying to put it back together. They haven't got much time left before the election comes. It's in disarray. And I believe all the support we can give our regional boards, it's incumbent on us.
So just for clarification, I think it's subjective to say that it's a value statement on whether we have an appointed member at large. I'm sorry?
Very valuable. It's a statement of our support. It's a statement. I don't want to suppose that the motion passes. I wanted council to know how many are elected on this board. How many councils? I believe there's only a couple. Is it Starland, Wheatland County, and Drumheller? I don't know if Nehill is on it. And I don't know if Special Areas is on it.
Nehill is included in the membership. Special areas is not listed, but I'm not sure if they have somebody who,
Is Nehill on it?
yes.
Because Nehill has another hospital in Three Hills, and they have their own healthcare system. So Nehill is showing the support in a huge way for the betterment of their citizens.
So I'm going to reiterate it. I believe it's your opinion that it's a value statement about how much we appreciate or value the work that the foundation does. There also needs to be clarity in our discussion that this is not a regional health board. There are, I believe we're currently under the Prairie Mountain Regional Health Board, which I at times have volunteered to attend board meetings when I've received invitations and had capacity to attend. I've done that in a volunteer capacity. I also feel very strongly about a strong healthcare system, but it is not, for the most part, within municipal jurisdiction. There are ways that municipalities can strengthen the healthcare system. I was just at a rural health conference last week in Wainwright. There were probably 100, maybe 200 representatives, many municipalities who are working with RPAP to strengthen attraction and retention of health professionals, specifically in rural communities across Alberta. A lot of important work being done. I would disagree that by having a passionate volunteer who is willing to represent and fill the seat for Wheatland County on the board, that that's any value statement. I think it's an incredible show of the passion if we have a volunteer who is willing to make that commitment and serve in that position. I think it's fantastic that we had a previous councillor who was willing to volunteer. I'll take your word for it, 30 years as a volunteer on the board, or however long it was. That's an incredible commitment. To this point, we have not had a councillor who's willing to do it in a volunteer capacity. There has been multiple requests, and at one point almost implied a demand that council pay a councillor to attend these meetings, and that to date has not been supported by council. But it has been brought forward multiple times and being considered fairly and democratically by council. But I do take issue with making it a value statement of our support or appreciation for the work that this incredible organization does. I think we have to be clear that this is not a regional health board. Councillor Kester.
You put the word value in my mouth. Value didn't come out of my mouth. This is a foundation. It's not a board, but it's a foundation. All I want to know, who sits on it? Now, talk all you want and values. I didn't mention values. I want to know who sits on it. I didn't in no way say we should only appoint one, volunteer or counselor. I said we used to have a volunteer and a counselor on it all the time. And I can't say that the counselor was never remunerated for attending any meetings. Some he did wasn't. I don't know if they all were. We could look at it. But I would like to know who sits on this foundation. That's all I'm asking. Vote on it.
Deputy Ruth Clausen.
Just for clarification, I wasn't at the last council meeting, I was ill, but was it, or the one I was ill at, this was all in that information package, was all the information that you were asking for was in there. I don't know if you were here or not that day, but from my understanding, it was all in there.
So the bylaws were included in a report from administration. The actual, I think the delineation is the actual current composition, because there's a provision under 1.1 within the bylaws where the municipalities, it says, so that I'll just read the wording. Membership shall be open to any individual that resides within the foundation district who may, at the option of each of the member municipalities, be either an elected councillor or an appointed member at large of each of the following member municipalities. And then it outlines one member from Wheatland County, one from Nehill, one from Starland, two from the town of Drumheller. And so my understanding is that the request for information at this point would be the current composition of the board today. How many of those, I guess 5 representatives, there could be members at large within the, so current members of the board who are elected versus non-elected, I believe. Find out the broad spectrum of who is appointed. I think that's what Councillor Kester was looking for. You're saying that's all you were asking for, but there were certainly some judgment statements made as well in the discussion.
It was reasoning why I'm asking, but all I'm asking for is a simple who's on the board. Foundation.
And my statements were made because I don't want there to be the perception that because we don't have a volunteer counselor serving at this time, that we don't value the work of the foundation. That's all I'm trying to make clear on the public record. Are there any other questions or discussion regarding the current motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Let's move to agenda item 2.81. So administration has prepared a report with the dates for the upcoming RMA conferences, and there's a recommendation. Council's wishes. It's on page 78.
I'll make the motion for Wheatland County to attend the rural municipalities of Alberta 2025 conventions, spring, March 17th to 19th, 25, fall, November 17th to 20th, 2025, both in Edmonton.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.82. Administration has outlined the dates, May 29th to June 1st, for an upcoming FCM conference in Ottawa. Council's wishes.
After attending FCM, I'll make the motion that council doesn't attend any more FCM things. I think it was a complete and total waste of time, and that's the only one I went to was in Calgary, and it's the scope of it is way too far away from a county.
Thank you,
Yes,
Deputy.
I'm not the only one that it's felt that way. I talked to a lot of councillors that were there.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. We'll move to Council Lawerson.
I'd say the same thing. I don't support sending anyone to this.
I'm going to offer a counter perspective. I don't disagree with you that there's limited value in attending FCM. I had both incredible personal frustration with the previous conference and also heard feedback from many of our colleagues that were in attendance. FCM currently governs and oversees a significant financial program that municipalities take advantage of, and currently is our liaison, our voice between us and the federal government. I think there are some risks with that in the future, that there's some current risks with that in the way that FCM represents, particularly us as rural Albertan municipalities. But I do believe that the only way to strengthen an organization or to create change is to be involved. And so while I don't feel we should have significant attendance, I do think there is some merit in having attendance, continuing to provide feedback. We're in other situations where our voice is not the majority around the table, and our position is not always respected or heard or the majority force in an organization. But I do think it's important that we continue to participate. But I very much respect what you're saying about the issues with the organization. I hope folks have weighed in on the survey that FCM has done around issues they focus on and how they represent and serve us. And I know our council specifically has taken opportunities to engage more directly with FCM and provide feedback. I share your frustration. We'll go to Councillor Eichert and then Deputy Reeve-Clausen.
And I appreciate the thought that if you're not at the table, but the last time I was there, I believe there was 285 members from Alberta were there, and we were largely ignored. At some point in time, it becomes better when the people go, why aren't they at the table? And if enough of us take the stand that we're not going to go to the table until you come to us and ask us why we're not at the table. So there's two ways to look at it. And I understand, I fully appreciate your point of being at the table. This is, my view is, let's not go to the table, and maybe they will ask why. Why is there no participation?
Just backing up my motion. So before I was ever elected, I had no idea FCM even existed. I knew of AUMA because I worked on the rural side, or urban side, and I didn't know much of RMA. But since being here for a second term, I've seen that RMA is a really good organization. And honestly, FCM is not what I thought it would be. When you meet, I did meet people from rural Quebec, rural parts of other parts of Canada. We all were the same people. So I'd rather see, and I've had this discussion, and I've heard a little bit of it at RMA, that RMA takes a step forward and works with other rurals in Canada directly. I don't think FCM has a $1 billion line item in a budget that taxpayers aren't even aware of. You could ask 99 taxpayers in a room, I bet you none of them know what's even there, and it's ridiculous. We can get a lot more done with the people that have like minds. This is not like minds. This is you're fighting against bigger urbans is what I see, which is fine. They have their own clout and their own issues. Let them figure it out. Urban, rural Canada, rural Alberta needs to, and this is North America wide, I've heard it on the States too, you need to get on your own podium, not be on somebody else's. And I'd fully support RMA getting more involved in that, and I think they're going in that direction.
So I think that's a great idea for RMA to kind of develop more of a rural Canada kind of group that way. But I recall, not this year, but last year, I think, when ReveLink went to Toronto, maybe, you had spent some time with MP Shields, and you had done a bunch of engagement with some other federal ministers. And so I think there's value in that. I wonder if we should make a motion to just send our Reeve if she chooses to go.
I support the will of council. So the meeting with MP Shields and some other members of the opposition was on a Community Futures conference that was funded through Community Futures. I didn't go to FCM in Toronto. I believe I had a surgery and the registration was refunded. I did attend in Quebec City, and we definitely do have an opportunity to engage with MPs. And I did take that opportunity when we were in Quebec City. Because of the proximity to Ottawa, there was certainly federal government representation. I did also in Quebec City, much of the focus of that conference was around broadband and connectivity. So there were a number of fulsome sessions. I found that less so at the latest FCM conference, where I felt that there was significant value that I could bring back to us as a municipality. One of the challenges is you don't always know the full agenda or what the sessions will be when you're registering as under an early bird. There are also opportunities to network with colleagues across Alberta and Canada. I know Army, was very grateful for the amount of our membership that came out, and we're ambassadors for Alberta to our colleagues across Canada. And I agree with you that our issues resonate with rural elected officials across Canada. Obviously, I respect the will of council. I think if we're going to not attend as a statement, there may be some merit in calling on other councils across rural Alberta to stand with us in that statement. And then it may be beneficial for RMA to have an official request, whether we start developing a resolution for spring conference, requesting RMA to explore rural federal advocacy more formally on behalf of rural Canada. But those are my thoughts. We do have a motion on the floor. Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
Comments? Simple saying, you only get out of it what you put into it. A lot of truth in that. And if we decide not to go, and we're the only ones that don't go, nobody will even miss us. Your suggestion, we put a thing forward or talk to the people at RMA, all the rurals. Maybe we all get together and make a statement. Then maybe we accomplish something.
I totally agree with that. This is the first step. We need to decide how this council goes. This is a motion on the floor. If it goes and succeeds, we go down that road. If it fails here, that's fine. I mean, it's just, it's democracy. Put a motion forward on my thoughts and my input. If you don't feel the same way, don't vote for it.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Are there subsequent motions we would like to consider? Do you want me to
Yeah,
add something?
I think your idea of putting it to RMA is great. I don't know if we do it as a resolution or as just a letter. So I don't know.
So the benefit of a resolution is it allows the membership to basically have a direct say
Okay.
and to weigh in, and it gives the board a sense of a letter is good because it indicates Wheatland County is supportive of that. A resolution takes it through the process to weigh all of our membership's position on something. So it would take a little bit more time, but we could direct administration to draft a resolution, and perhaps we put it on a committee of the whole prior to, right, yeah. Perhaps we just request that a proposed resolution be placed on a committee of the whole agenda so we could all bring our thoughts and some input into what that might look like, just to give administration a little bit more direction in what to draft.
She said.
So just to direct administration
Like to direct
to,
administration, yeah, to bring a possible resolution to committee of the whole for 2 RMA on a federal rural association.
Perfect.
I just want to clarify too for council, the motion that was made by me and passed was only for attendance at the conference. As far as I know, we're still members of FCM. That could be decided at a future date. I didn't want to, I did that on purpose because if there was some kind of a funding that we're going through or something at this time, I didn't want to kill it. I don't know what's in play at this time, but council, just something in the future, that would be my idea going forward, would be that as well at some point.
So we have the motion on the floor. I appreciate your comments, Deputy Reeve-Clausen, and I did notice the nuance, and I do appreciate that. I think my preference is to maintain a membership at this point because of the funding available through FCM. We're almost shooting ourselves in the foot to, to not have that available if there's infrastructure funding or something like that that we can use to reduce the burden on our taxpayers. But I think a strong statement could be made, particularly if we saw other rural municipalities stand with us in not attending the conference. I think you could see a substantial shift with that. And while I have a different perspective around attendance, I see strong merit and obviously support council's position, but see a strong action that could come from that. So we have a motion on the floor directing administration. Could we just insert the word perhaps discussion around a possible, just so that administration doesn't feel they need to bring a draft resolution without fulsome sort of direction? To bring a discussion on a possible resolution to a committee of the whole? Does that capture Councillor Bigger?
I'll support the motion on the floor. The last RMA regional meeting we attended, listened to our outgoing president basically say, this is your chance now. You're one of the few last chances you have a strong rural provincial government. So take advantage of it while you can, which is why I think this is really important. And yes, there's an election coming up there in a while too, but our rural way of life is going to change with all of these federal policies that I saw coming forward and the direction that it's going, it can drastically change how we look at things. And in the end, we're still feeding people, so.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Is there an appetite for a motion to direct a letter from the Reeve to other municipalities across rural Alberta, calling for them to stand with us in not attending the next FCM conference?
I think that's a great idea. If we're going to make a statement, then like our little voice, I don't think, but if we encourage others to do the same, then it has power. As it is right now, I don't think it has enough power.
I have no problem making that motion. I've talked to a lot of rural people and they're definitely waiting for somebody to take the step. And I think we'll get a lot of support. So how that letter is worded, I'm not a word crafter. Maybe we can have something drafted up and look at later today. That sees council or another time, or is it, what's a push, right? What's the best timeline? It'd be nice to have something before the RMA convention next month. Actually, 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away. So.
Yeah, administration has no issues drafting that letter, and we would definitely bring it back to council for approval prior to attending. And there is a council meeting, I believe, on November 1st. So it'll give us ample time to get that into the package.
Perfect. I'll make the motion that staff craft a letter to bring back for next council meeting for a review.
Sorry, you know what? I have my dates mixed up. There's actually not. But I will draft it and get it sent out to council ASAP.
So perhaps I wonder if the motion could be to include for administration to circulate to council for approval at sort of the end of our agenda of our regular council meeting today.
I accept that.
Just give administration a moment. So we have a motion that council direct administration to draft a letter from the Reeve with a call to action and circulate the letter to council at the October 15th, 2024 regular council meeting. Can we just add for approval?
Question. I'm thinking we'll send this out to all the Reeves and mayors, rural municipalities. Would you consider CCing it to the FCM too?
Yeah, let's finalize because there might be other members or associations that might be prudent to circulate it to. Let's finalize that when we finalize the letter. And if everybody wants to just think about where we might have the most momentum, because there's ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, which it's a little bit of a different structure because it's a subset of their broader organization that represents all municipalities. So it's different than Alberta, where we have two fraternal organizations. But there may be some merit in sending it to some of the rural associations across Canada. I know Saskatchewan specifically has their rural association, but perhaps we can all just contemplate where we might have the greatest impact between now and when we're considering the letter. But that's a great idea, Councillor Kuster. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.83.
Just a follow-up,
Oh, sorry, yes.
because we're not done yet. I would like to make a motion that we bring back a discussion in the committee of the whole about whether or not we want to belong to the Federation. And the reason being, and it's been said a million times, but I'll say it again, there is one taxpayer. We are being bribed by our own money. And the billions of dollars that Alberta sends via equalization payments to Ottawa is just coming back at, we send $1 billion out and we get a couple $100,000 back. It doesn't make any sense. And if the only reason we belong to this organization is because we're going to sit there and go, please, sir, can I have another cup? Is it a reason? So I would like to make a motion that we direct administration to bring this discussion, the discussion of whether or not we belong to the FCM, whether or not the county should actually belong to FCM. So that's my motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eichert. Deputy Reeve Clausen, and we'll give administration some time to.
I'd like to see that, like a cause and effect, because, you know, we've had discussion. Is there some kind of actual data that we can see the benefit of and the effect if we weren't? And is it something that's acceptable to us or not? It's a great discussion to have. So yeah, for sure, I'd support that.
So for clarity, you would like to see administration perhaps to bring a report with opportunities for membership in FCM, perhaps funding that we have received.
Yeah, like
And
a
then we
review
can
of,
weigh that.
I guess, yeah, a review of what we've done, what has the membership cost, what has we benefited from in the last, I guess, the last 2 terms would be effective for us, because that's directly affecting us, and then see going forward. Because if the cost is higher than what you're actually getting back, so is it worth it? Right?
For administration, I believe we've had some reporting on this done historically as well that could probably be built on. Yep. Perfect. So we have a motion that council direct administration to bring back a discussion to a committee of the whole meeting regarding FCM membership. Any more questions or discussion? I think it's an excellent conversation to have, and I appreciate the motion. Thank you. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 2.83, Provincial Ag Services Board attendance. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council authorizes all Wheatland County Council members to attend either the 2025 Provincial Ag Service Board Conference in Edmonton on January 20th to 22nd, 2025, or the 2025 Crossroad Convention Farm Tech in Edmonton on January 28th to 29th. Just for clarity, so that would be all Wheatland County Council members, regardless of whether they're on ASB.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion?
We have members at large on Ag Service Board. They want to go. How do they get paid?
So that, I believe, goes through the ASB board, approves their attendance. It doesn't have to come through council.
Yeah. So I would suggest maybe we should align it so ASB can appoint or send council members to.
I think the only reason
We
this is
have the
coming,
power to do that as a council. The only thing we can't put on ASB, I believe, is budget. We can give them any other power we want, I believe.
So sorry, just for clarity, you're suggesting that ASB should approve who attends? Councillors or members at large?
I guess that's a statement.
yeah, it's certainly something we could explore at ASB. Yep, absolutely. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And administration has put together a number of orientation documents with links to them on page 87. Feel free to access those whenever it is beneficial. That brings us to the conclusion of the agenda for our 2024 organizational meeting, and meeting is adjourned. Oh, sorry, Councillor Laverson.
Before we adjourn, and since it was Thanksgiving, we need to be thankful of things. I'm thankful we have an election coming up in a year. That should be an interesting thing. But I would like to make a motion that the ballots from the organizational meeting be destroyed.
Just a question to administration. Do we need a motion if the procedure bylaw indicates they will be?
No. So one revision with the procedure bylaw is that now that's ingrained into the bylaw, so we just do it automatically now.
Oh, okay.
It's a new procedure.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Laverson. So I think that's covered in the procedure bylaw. The ballots will be destroyed. And that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda. Thank you, everybody.